Hey everyone, welcome to the first video for Chapter 32. The title for Chapter 32 is Regional Conflicts from 1945 to the Present. World War II ends in 1945, and so the hope of the world is that the really major conflicts are done. And unfortunately, that's not the case. We see regional conflicts all throughout the world. We haven't seen the massive scale conflicts, the likes of World War I and World War II, since 1945, but warfare doesn't go away. As you can see from the pictures, suffering and violence that has continued throughout the end of the 20th century into the 21st. And a lot of it has to do with ethnic and religious conflict. So let's get into talking about this one. Conflicts divide nations. Many wars and conflicts in recent decades have come about due to ethnic or religious differences, as I just mentioned before. Sometimes there's civil wars within nations, right? Within one nation, two groups fighting against each other. Other times regional rivalries had led to smaller scale wars between nations. In this first video, we're going to look at several of these conflicts, starting first with ethnic and religious conflicts. Let me move me down here. There we go. Ethnic and religious conflicts have been going on for centuries, right? They're often caused by a cultural difference between two groups that is considered a deal breaker, so to speak, right? There's just something about them, whether it's a cultural difference, that they said, we just can't be on the same page with this. More often than not, it has to do with religion, though. Religion is always a troublesome issue because it's one of the most important characteristics of what makes somebody who they are. And if someone else believes in a different religion, well, that's a deal breaker, as I said. So whether it's Jewish versus Christian, Muslim versus Christian, or sometimes even within, such as Catholic versus Protestant or Sunni versus Shia, it doesn't have to be big differences. That's enough to, drive people to fight and kill each other. Now, example during this time period is a war in Sri Lanka. Now, Sri Lanka is a small island off the coast of India, ethnically very similar to India. But there was a tremendous amount of religious conflict there in the 20th century. Buddhists are the majority on the island, which made Hindus feel excluded. This led to a bloody civil war, which ended in 2002, only after the government agreed to create a separate government for Hindus. Another modern religious conflict was in Northern Ireland. Now, Ireland won its independence in 1922, but the 6 northern counties, right, those are the ones that you see up here, they were Protestant majorities, right? Down here, so you got Protestant, and then these down here are Catholic. Well, Great Britain is Protestant, so the northern counties up here, they wanted to remain a part of Great Britain, and they voted to do so. So that's why Northern Ireland is still a part of the United Kingdom to this day. This obviously made the rest of Ireland very unhappy, but it also made Catholics in Northern Ireland unhappy. Catholic minorities in Northern Ireland suffered discrimination, and in the 1960s, this eventually led to violence. The Irish Republican Army, otherwise known as the IRA, became the more militant group to try and resist British rule and to bring both of these areas together. Move me over here because we're going to be looking at a picture in a sec. It was a fairly violent group. It was branded a terrorist organization by the British government because of some of the acts that they engaged in, such as targeting British police officers and military people. This time period throughout the 60s and 70s in particular was known as the Troubles because of the fighting that was going on. Now, no peace talks really stuck until 1998 when they had the Good Friday Agreement. This was a peace accord between Catholics and Protestants. Here you see Protestant and Catholics leader with Bono of U2 in the middle of it, celebrating kind of the peace accords. Excuse me. And, it obviously has brought an end to most of the conflict that you see there in Northern Ireland. Now, this fighting also was found after the breakup of the Soviet Union. Okay, so kind of changing areas here. most notably in a region called Chechnya. Now, Chechnya is a small region kind of in southern Russia, right on the border with Georgia. Right, so all of this up here, this is all Russia. We got the Ukraine and so forth. And it's a small region bordering down here with Georgia. They are predominantly Muslim, okay, which sets them at odds with the majority Orthodox Christian Russian population, and they wanted independence from Russia. Now, Russia brutally crushed a Chechen uprising in the mid-1990s, killing large numbers of civilians. This got a lot of international press and painted the Russians in a bad light. It turned into a very violent and bloody struggle. And because of this, unfortunately, Chechnya turned to terrorism to try and hurt Russia. Move me back over here. There we go. This resulted in many civilian casualties in Russia, as well as Chechen terrorists becoming associated with other Muslim terrorist organizations. They've become affiliated with ISIS and Al-Qaeda and things like that, and that just doesn't do much for painting you in a good light in the international community. Now, some of the worst ethnic violence of the 20th century took place in Yugoslavia. Now, Yugoslavia is not a country today. This is where it used to be. Okay, you've got Italy and Greece behind it. It was formed after World War I. But today, it's broken up into a number of different countries. So you've got Slovenia, Croatia, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Vojvodina, Serbia, Montenegro, Kosovo, Albania, Macedonia. Okay, so these were all part of Yugoslavia up until the mid-1990s. This kind of multi-ethnic aspect of it was the reason why it fell apart. Excuse me. Not only did you have different nationalities, you had different languages, you had different religions in some case, different cultures and so forth, and they just couldn't all get on the same page. Now, the dominant ethnic group here were the Serbs, all right, in Serbia. They were really the dominant group in the old Yugoslav government. They controlled the ruling Communist Party in Yugoslavia. Problems began, though, following the fall of communism. After the Cold War, nationalist groups wanted their independence. Now, when Croatia, this group over here, when Croatia declared independence, civil war broke out, first between Serbs and Croats, okay? But it soon spread to neighboring Bosnia. Bosnia was a mix of a number of these, right? You notice how it's in between Croatia and Serbia. So you've got Serbs, you've got Croats, and you also have Muslim Bosnians in there. Muslim Bosnians were actually the largest ethnic group overall, but they were spread out all over the place. And they didn't want Bosnia broken up into different ethnic regions because they felt like they didn't have one home region because, as I said, they were spread out everywhere. This led to the Serbian government cracking down on them very, very violently. When the fighting broke out, Serbs committed what's called ethnic cleansing. Oh, sorry, should have put that in there when I circled Bosnia. But they committed what we call ethnic cleansing. Ethnic cleansing is just what it sounds like. Okay, you're trying to cleanse a land of a certain ethnicity. It's kind of a different way of saying genocide. Thousands were killed in mass executions. Didn't mean to do that just yet. Okay. Eventually, NATO and U.S. And the United States sent airstrikes that ended the fighting, but violence in the region continued in Kosovo. Now, you see Kosovo down here. Okay, well, for some reason it's not underlined, but you can see it just beneath Serbia. It's a small province in Serbia. Now, almost 90% of the people who live in Kosovo are ethnic Albanians. All right, so even though it's a separate region, they identify themselves with Albania. They're also largely Muslim as well. And because of this, they were oppressed by the Serbian government. Now, when the Albanians in Kosovo resisted, Serbian forces attempted ethnic cleansing in there as well, killing thousands. A lot of them ending up in mass graves with mass executions. NATO airstrikes, similar to what ended it in Bosnia, they eventually ended the fighting in Kosovo, but really nothing could hold Yugoslavia together, and the region remains several different nations to this day. All right, so first video we're doing for chapter 32, just talking about introduction into some ethnic and religious conflicts, and then for the next one, we're going to be getting into some of the conflicts and issues in Africa.